Our speaker today is Adam Lewinberg. He is the president and CEO of Postal Advocate, the only mail audit and recovery firm in the US and Canada. We manage a portfolio of over 181,000 pieces of mailing and shipping equipment for the largest US companies. He speaks and teaches nationally on mail savings and industry trends. He is a former industry co-chair of the Boston Postal Customer Council and Mail Systems Management Association member. He is CMDSS and MDC certified. He is the featured writer for the Mailing Systems Technology magazine. Adam has worked for one of the largest mailing vendors for over 17 years. He was the director of national sales for Presort tabletop inserters, addressing hardware and software and green offerings. And he was also one of the top 5 account managers nationally, working with some of the nation's largest accounts. Postal Advocate is not affiliated with any mailing vendors, so we can offer you unbiased advice. Over to you, Adam.
Thanks, Michaela. So we're going to be talking about the future of business mail. And when we're talking about the future of business mail, we're talking about research that's been done over my career, over about 27 years of this. And as well as like industry research, postal consultations, groups that I work with. And this is where we're sort of seeing the changes that are going on. And we're going to be talking about mail declines in different categories, the impacts of rate increases. This has become a much bigger issue in the future. Mailing technology changes, future predictions, and then best practices to reduce costs. Throughout this entire presentation, we're going to be talking about saving strategies in order to manage sort of the increases that are inevitably happening. We have a lot to cover today. I probably will end up talking really fast, so I apologize for it, but it's mainly to get you the most information in this short period that we're together. Mail declines. So we're going to focus, there's 2 main mail classes. There's the market dominant classes, which are your letters and your flats, and then there's parcel. And we're going to focus in this segment on primarily on the market dominant, which is the main letter mail that we're doing today. And if you look at the main categories, we have first class single piece, which is just the day-to-day stuff that we're metering or stamping in our office. First class mail pre-sort, which is mail that either goes to a pre-sort service for a commingling share, and we'll talk more about pre-sort, or you outsource to a third party, or you use an automation software to be able to have barcodes and pre-sorted put onto the piece. Or marketing mail, which is typically outsourced, and it is your more generic content, promotional material. Newsletters, flyers, catalogs, coupons, that sort of thing goes marketing mail. So people talk about mail going down at huge rates and the death of mail and things like that. And I want to break this down and break out the misconception to show you what's really happening. This is basically the last 15 years of mail. And if you look at the first class single piece mail, it's going down by a lot. It's going down by 8 to 10% averages per year overall. 8 to 9% is what we're sort of seeing overall. 8.8% in 2020, 9.2% in 2021. First class single piece is 2 things. It's one, we're all sending a few less Christmas cards and letters to family and friends. And that's a small segment of it. But most of this mail is done through businesses. And it's the stuff that we do in our offices every day. And that's going down at the largest rate. And we'll talk about the reasons why. A lot of that first class single mail piece is pushed over to pre-sort classes, so they can get postage discounts. So medium to larger size companies are getting smarter about how they mail, and they're pushing their mail to service providers that can get them pre-sort rates. And that can either be a pre-sort service that picks up your mail, or it could be an outsourced provider that gives the capabilities to get the automation rates. And you could see the declines in first class pre-sorts really only 1 or 2%, per year over the last few years. Probably averaging about 2%, much smaller. And then if you look at marketing mail, we saw a huge decline in marketing mail in 2020 at the start of COVID, because obviously nobody was marketing anything, everything was shut down. But it increased slightly in 2021 because of, people were starting to mail again. But overall, when you look at most normal years, the declines are relatively minimal. So when you look at the quantity of these classes, of first class pre-sort, of marketing mail, there are over 100 million of the 115 million pieces. The majority of mail volumes is not going down at that dramatic a level. What's going down is the first class single piece mail pieces, and that's going to continue. And these are the reasons why. The primary uses for first class mail, the stuff that we're doing in the businesses throughout the country, is invoices and statements. It's the #1 thing people mail. And what's happening in invoices and statement? More of them are moving to email and web presentment. Larger organizations are getting smarter and they're consolidating or outsourcing this mail and moving it to first-class mail pre-sort to get the lower postage rates. Checks. People used to send checks, accounts payable checks. People still send them, but there's fewer of them. More and more people want to get paid through ACH so they can get their money faster, and they don't have to go to the post office and deposit. They don't have to go to their bank and deposit the checks. People used to get payroll checks, and then people stopped getting payroll checks, and then they got direct deposit slips, and the direct deposit slips were mailed. And now a lot of organizations say, we're not mailing direct deposit slips. You can go access your payroll data on the website. And so that segment was the second biggest mail segment, and that's going away. Marketing mailings. Many offices used to do marketing mailings in their office. They used to sit around a table, have pizza, and generate a notification or an event reminder or something like that, and send it out in the mail without discounts. People have gotten smarter about that. Email marketing has grown in popularity, leaps and bounds. Also, there are online ways to send these smaller mailings to outsource providers who can do it at lower cost rates. So what's left is the day-to-day stuff. I need to send this a check. I need to get this signature out. I need to get this contract, this miscellaneous smaller stuff. But that's much smaller volume than it used to be, and it will continue to go down. And this 14 million pieces billion pieces that you're seeing today, the same trajectory we can expect. In 2007, this was 38 billion pieces. Now it's 14 billion. This segment will keep declining, but the remainder of mail, the biggest chunk of mail, is staying put. And we don't foresee this having any major changes unless there's like major regulations from Congress that allow people to stop mailing, without client consent. And we don't see that happening in the near term. The future of office mail and parcel. There's 31 billion businesses in the US. We primarily focus on enterprise accounts, clients that have 25 or more locations. There's 4,300 companies that fit that profile in the United States with 2.6 million locations. We estimate there's about 700,000 postage meters left in the United States. 20% of those we estimate are in the enterprise space of about 140,000 accounts. What that means is 5% of enterprise locations have postage meters. So 95% of the locations in our enterprise accounts don't have any mailing technology. They have no way to send a letter without going to the post office. There's lots of acquisition activity that's going on because there's a lot of equity funding, and they're doing things trying to group single companies into like larger enterprise conglomerates. We're seeing a lot of that in healthcare, where they're trying to group single medical practices into big corporate conglomerates. We're seeing a lot of that in the service sector as well. Companies need to support small offices and remote workers with mail and parcel that but they don't want to pay on a per subscription basis for services. With COVID, there's a lot of need to support the home office worker. Even though people are coming back to work, most companies are not having people come back full time. There's still going to be a need to support the remote worker, as well as the small offices that don't have any technology. The carriers are raising rates at the fastest levels in history. USPS is having multiple rate increases per year annually. There's a need for clients to have multi-carrier rate shopping options. We'll go into a lot more detail on this. Most organizations have complete visibility to UPS and FedEx, but limited post office data. Most organizations use free carrier-provided tools that link all of their locations to one central platform. They have an invoice that gives them full detail of everybody's spend across the organization. People don't have that for mail. Their free tools do not have, but the free tools that they use from UPS and FedEx don't have things they need, like single sign-on. They're difficult maybe to control users. They need better access to post office services. And what I'll show more detail on is it's easier in many companies to send a $10 FedEx than a 53-cent stamp. The mail vendors need to have more flexible offerings to be able to capitalize on this market, including different acquisition models, different added value services. And that's coming. We're seeing that development happening with the mailing companies. The biggest growth is going to be in multi-carrier models with standardization to control access across the enterprise. But solutions need to have cloud access, limited IT resources, because nobody wants to get involved their IT group if they don't have to, because they have typically 6-month wait times. Simple to implement and maintain. They need to control their users for full visibility, and it has to save money. And we'll talk about all those things. The impact of rate increases. The post office just had its largest rate increase in 10 years last August with 6 to 10% increases. They stated there are going to be 2 rate increases annually. They're moving from 1 rate increase annually to 2 rate increases annually. And the rates are going to be tied to inflation, which makes this year some of the largest. We have the highest inflation levels. The rates are tied to the consumer price index, which is inflation, and therefore we can expect to have at least 6 to 10% increases for this year going forward. UPS and FedEx, they just had a 6% increase in 2022. We're hearing the carriers are renegotiating their rates with clients with huge increases. The client has less leverage in contract negotiations due to the fact that the carriers are at full supply, they're at full capacity. They're being more selective of what clients they're going after and what they're putting onto their networks. Plus, with everything that's happening in Ukraine, fuel prices being in the $4 to $5 range, there's 13 to 15% fuel surcharges being added today on your parcels, and we can expect that to go up. The reason I'm bringing this up is customers need rate shopping tools that compare the costs and service levels throughout all providers as the only way to control cost. The only way to control cost is to get your options on one screen where it's easy for your users to make better decisions at the point of shipment. Post office increase. You can see this is the largest increase that we've had in 10 years. Plus, on top of that, it was the second increase we had. We had 2 rate increases last year. The highest volume categories, when we looked at it, that make up 85% of mail volumes are first class auto letters, first class auto flats, marketing mail letters, marketing mail flats. This makes up the majority of people's mail volumes, and we saw 8 to 17% increases. Single piece rates were at 6% as well. 2 rate increases in 1 year, plus the USPS data, this is going to happen in the future. Parcel. So UPS, FedEx, Post Office. They claimed that UPS and FedEx both said they had 5.9% increases, and the Post Office claimed a 2.7% increases on their parcels. The items that are highlighted in yellow are areas where the carriers had bigger rate increases than the published rates they documented. And if you look at these are the most common areas that most of us ship. 1 to 10 pounds going zones 2 to 4, next day air 7.4%, 6.9%. Most people who are shipping next day are shipping letters 1 to 10 pound and 1 to 10 pound items. They're not shipping huge heavy items through that. You can see the rate increases were larger than the carriers published. Mailing technology changes. There's more online postage accounts in the United States today than there are postage meters. There is multiple options today to process USPS, UPS, and FedEx on a single cloud-based platform, and we'll talk more about that. There are new solutions that have single sign-on options to make controlling users easy. Single sign-on is a huge deal in enterprise accounts because what happens today, if you don't have single sign-on, is a user needs to be set up, they have to be manually set up. A user leaves, they're no longer employed, they're still on systems without single sign-on. And it requires the administrators to go in and delete users when they're no longer active. What happens in most organizations is this never happens. And then that employee who's no longer employed anymore still has access to mail and ship on your platforms. So single sign-on controls that. They don't need usernames and passwords. They're automatically logged in when they log into their network for multiple programs. And then the moment they're no longer employed, they're booted out. It's very important for most organizations to have this feature. The free carrier provided tools from UPS and FedEx don't have this. Systems are sold either by location or enterprise. Based on USPS compliance details, this is important, 70% of the postage meters in the United States will need to be updated by 2024 because they don't comply with the new USPS requirements around postal security. So what we think is going to happen is a lot of those meters that are going to have to be updated in that time period are going to move to cloud-based online postage because it's more cost effective, there's better visibility, and they have more control. And if it's low volume applications, which is where online postage fits, it's going to be more of a win for the client. Everything is moving to the cloud because it's ease of deployment, access, and management. So let's talk about what online postage is. It's the most common remote mailing solution. It's typically sold as a subscription model per location. You can print from any computer with an internet connection or a printer. People are either going to print 4x6 shipping labels if it's a parcel, and they're going to either print on regular paper and tape the item to or use a label ope, or they're going to use Avery type labels that they can buy at any office supply store, and they're going to print the 4x6 label. Postage stamps, most people will use the stamp sheets provided from the mailing vendors, and those stamp sheets have a serial number on the top, and you say how many stamps you want to print, and the next time you enter that serial number, if you printed the first 10, it grays out the first 10 and starts at the 11th position. Some people will try to print on envelopes, but as an enterprise deployment, that's a little more difficult because not everybody knows how to feed an envelope into their printer. It's just a fact of life. And some people will use, vendor provided label printers. It's not very common for people to use that. Most people use the sheets, to be frank. The online postage is the fastest growth segment of the mailing industry because it's inexpensive compared to postage meters, typically cost $10 to $30 a month. It's cloud-based, access from any device, easy to deploy. Within a week or two, you receive your credentials and you're up and running. But most importantly, you have visibility to the history and package statuses of every item. When you use a postage meter, you have visibility to the fact that you filled the meter with $500, and then you know all of your meters throughout the country that filled $500 or $200. But most meters, unless you have more elaborate accounting systems, you don't have visibility to the package level detail, the letter details, who sent it, what cost center, what date, what time, what class. With online postage, you have visibility to every single piece of mail that was mailed across your entire organization. It's very difficult to do without more expensive accounting packages that you would have through postage meters. Some systems have multiple carrier options, UPS and FedEx. There's significant postage savings. In fact, some of the newer postage meters even come with online postage subscriptions in order to get these rates. So let's talk about these savings. If you're sending a 1-ounce letter, if you go to the post office and you purchase stamps, it's 58 cents. If you use a postage meter or PC postage, it's both 53 cents. You save 5 cents a piece. If you're doing certified mail, parcel, first-class parcel, priority mail, express mail, when you use an online postage, PC postage, or an online postage solution, you're getting the commercial rate versus the retail rate you get when you go to the post office or when you use a postage meter. The savings on that is 7 to 65% on these mail classes. There's significant postage savings and trackability that you get by using the commercial rates through an online postage or PC postage solutions. The next iteration is we're talking about a single subscription for an online postage solution. What we try to push clients to, if they have lots of locations, is cloud-based enterprise options. And the enterprise online postage is the same as the standard online postage, the main difference being how multiple locations can be controlled under a single administration license. So this offers the following benefits. Simplicity onboarding new users. It's very easy. From a central administration point, you can control how you add new users. Reporting on all locations and users' activities on a central dashboard, managing your billing and subscriptions and supplies and postage from one central place, controlling your user access. This includes removing users who are no longer active. Some systems have single sign-on, so you can control it like we talked about. If you have more than 10 locations using online postage, we strongly recommend having an enterprise license. It can be less expensive and give you more control. The next iteration is MultiCarrier enterprise mail and shipping. So it's similar to the online postage and the enterprise online postage, but it's focused more on shipping. It'll have more robust rate shopping between the carriers and the service levels. It can create rules that can be enforced automatically. Examples could be like only directors have the ability to ship 8:30 a.m. shipments, or intercompany shipments default to 2-day ground. There can be improved user management and reporting, enhanced single sign-on, and some systems provide the option to print postage stamps on the same platforms as packages. So now, this is a weird concept, but I just want to make sure that this makes sense to everybody. In many organizations, it's easier to send a $10 overnight than a 53-cent letter. And if you think about the reasons, so the cost to send a FedEx or UPS starts at about $10. Plus, there could be extra fees for residential fees, fuel surcharges, delivery area surcharges, extra accessorials you want to use. Where mail, a letter is 53 cents. So if the technology, most companies are going to have a campus ship system, or use UPS.com if they use UPS, or FedEx.com if they use FedEx. All their users are controlled through that central platform They get one consolidated bill for all their usage. With mail, it varies by location. We talked about 5% of locations have postage meters. Some are going to have, PC postage. Some go to the post office to purchase stamps, which is probably the majority of users. What we're proposing is there should be uniform web access to mail. Where can they mail? Large corporate offices, probably need postage meters. They have uniform web access with UPS and FedEx. Other company locations, which make up 99% of the rest of their locations, probably an online postage solution would suffice, where there could be uniform web access, which they have with UPS and FedEx. But if you think about it today, some offices have postage meters or PC postage, others will need to go to the post office to purchase stamps. Remote workers, most of which have to go to the post office and purchase stamps. Visibility. So there's complete visibility with UPS and FedEx. With the postage process we just described, it's totally fragmented. Very few companies have visibility to all their mail spends across their locations. This type of platform gives complete visibility on consolidated invoices and dashboards. Funding. With UPS and FedEx, you get a bill for what you used. With post office, you're typically prepaying. You're filling a postage meter or online postage license. You're going to the post office up front and buying stamps. With these proposed solutions, you can pay after use. Chargeback, everything on a UPS and FedEx system is typically has a forced cost center when someone processes the shipment, so they can allocate all the charges back from the bill. With mail, very difficult, fragmented based on locations, metering technology, and payment methods. With what we propose, all locations are allocated to internal cost centers the same way UPS and FedEx is done. So you can see it's easier for most companies today to just use UPS and spend the $10 because they don't want to deal with the hassles of the 53-cent letter. The goal is to take those hassles out of the equation and make it just as easy and make people make the right decisions at the point of shipment. Comparing costs. So the key thing is to be able to compare costs against overnight, 2-day, 3-day ground, priority mail, and first class parcel across your carrier mix. So if you look at these costs, based on the distance things are going, these are your options. These are your typical options what's inside your organization. Most people default to their overnight services. And when we go to, for their desktop type mail shipments, they're defaulting to overnight services. What they're not seeing is that something local in zone 2 going 250 miles, the ground service, which is a fraction of the cost of the overnight, is typically guaranteed next day. So you get the same guaranteed delivery shipping it if you're using UPS ground or FedEx ground as you would if you sent it overnight service, because it's within 250 miles and it's going in zone 2. Things that are going halfway across the country may be better sending ground service than a 3-day service because you're getting the same type of deliveries. Having these ability to make these decisions on your, at the point of shipment, can help drive better decision making. So where we find the best rate shopping strategies is to compare your air rates to your guaranteed ground service. You can't do this on the free carrier provided systems because they don't show the ground rates at the same spot. You have to go into a different screen in order to even see it. Consider the USPS for lightweight residential items or rural zip codes. So when you look at a ground item as an example, that's going, let's say, halfway across the country at $10.50, gets 2 to 3 day delivery. Priority mail gets $7.75 for the cost of that. And if it's less than a pound, it could go for $3.81. But it's even more than that. Look at the extra costs that UPS and FedEx charge. 13 to 15% fuel surcharges, $4.85 if it's going to a residence, $3.40 to $6.50 if it's for delivery area surcharges, which hits 61% of the zip codes in the US that you're going to send to. Saturday delivery fees, address correction fees. You can see that very quickly the cost of, no matter what your discount levels are, when you add these fees, it makes the post office less expensive. And you need a way to be able to do these calculations quickly so your users can see the cost difference between one service and another. Create rules around 8:30 a.m. delivery. 8:30 a.m. delivery usually adds about $25 to $35 per package. You can create rules pushing people to 10:30 or end of day service. Make sure items are coded as letter or parcel. You can see there's differences in the letter versus the parcel rates in many of these cases, especially in your overnights. You know, if you can shove it into a letter pack, get it into a letter pack because the rates are less. If it's a parcel, make sure the dimensions are entered up front because there's dimensional rates that you want to make sure you're comparing the dimensional rates, you know, versus of the total cost. The post office has lower dimensional rating costs than does UPS and FedEx. Carrier provided versus multi-carrier provided systems, multi-carrier shipping systems. So most people have free systems and they use the free systems because they're free and they've always used them and the carrier provides them and there hasn't been a lot of great alternatives until now to do this easily and effectively and inexpensively. So the best way to compare rates is to have multi-carrier systems and compare the rates across multiple carriers and service levels at the point of shipment. You need to have the right tools in place that help your end users make the best decisions on a package by package basis. And there are too many factors to make those decisions unilaterally. You can't just say we use UPS for everything and therefore we get the lowest rates because we've negotiated the biggest discounts. There are too many factors, dimensions, distances, residential, surcharges that are going to be there, fuel surcharges are going to be there. So these are the main differences between carrier-provided systems, free carrier-provided systems, and the multi-carriers. Multi-carriers obviously only have one carrier to compare. Multi-carrier systems can compare against multiple carriers. Typically about a 4 to 12% rate shopping savings and increased leverage when you're negotiating with carriers. If you use Campus Ship or FedEx.com throughout all your locations and you're trying to negotiate your contract, carrier knows you're never going to leave. It's going to be too difficult for you to manage your changes. If you have a multi-carrier system, you can literally turn a rate on and off in a day. Comparing air to ground on the same screen. The carrier-provided systems show ground, make you go into a different screen or a different place to see the ground rate on purpose. They don't want you making a comparison. They want you defaulting to the air shipping rates, which they're making higher profits on. The multi-carrier systems give you the option on the same screen to see the air and ground rates next to each other. So if the ground rate can get there at the same time, you can pick the lower cost offering. This is one of the largest savings areas. Some of multi-carrier systems have a flag in them, a database of every residential address in the country. And why that's important is because if you're shipping an item and someone doesn't click on the residential button on the free carrier provided system, you're not adding the extra $5 fee that needs to be included. Some of the multi-carrier systems can automatically know and tell you that's a residential shipment, and it will show you when it shows you the rates, that extra $5 is added, so you're not getting that extra charge after the fact. But more importantly, you're making a comparison on the rates with the $5 included to say what's your best option. Ability to access USPS priority mail and first class parcel on the same thing. For lightweight items going to residents or rural zip codes, prices start at $3. It's going to be your best bet because they're delivering to those addresses every day. Some systems have the ability to print postage stamps, so you can print the 53-cent letter on the same system, allowing people the option to say, it doesn't have to go overnight, I just need a way to get it out the door. Some systems have certified mail options that can save $1.25 on your return receipts from the same platform and store the signatures for up to 7 years. And some systems have single sign-on access, which the free carrier systems don't. The free carrier systems are great for the carriers to get you shipping on their network. They're not great for you to be able to optimize your savings, especially with the increases we're going to be getting into the future. Remote printing. So remote workers today don't have a great way to be able to mail things. So maybe they're working in offices that don't have any metering technology. Maybe they're working out of their homes, or maybe they're even working in an office that does have some sort of mail equipment, but they want to do certain mailings that frankly, they don't have any inserting equipment, they don't have any expertise, and they don't have any labor that we really want to be able to do it efficiently in their office. We'd rather push that to a facility that has the right equipment and people to do it more effectively. Remote workers need online tools to print larger volume documents at locations with the proper staff and technology. This can now be done with online tools that work through virtual print drivers or customized integration on larger jobs. So there's two options to really think about. If you have a lot of locations, can you push your mailings to a central print facility inside your organization where there's software that can control the process and the workflow? And so that's sort of option one. And option two is through a similar type of portal, there are professional outsource providers that you basically are sending your job to through a print driver, and they can manage your work on a subscription and per click basis. So how do these remote print drivers work? Usually there's some sort of print driver or website that you would access that launches a user interface. So think you have a document, a Word document, I want to send out 100 letters. You would physically print the letter, you go file print, and then one of your printer options might be an on-demand print driver. And that on-demand print driver will either ask for you to pick a template that you've already saved and stored, or if you want to create a new one, you line up where the address is that the document's going, what's a unique identifier on the document that changes per set. So if you have variable numbers of pages, it knows how to deviate between one set to another. And you can choose other things like, do you want to add additional pages? Like maybe there's a generic content that goes behind it. And you can save that template and print. And you can either print it to a remote facility inside your organization or send it to an outsource provider that can do it for you, all through one template that's been established. These templates can be saved and rerun, and jobs are sent to a virtual print queue where central area print manages the output. So it's designed to make it much easier. There's no reason to be doing mailings in every facility throughout your organization when it can be funneled to either a central facility in-house or to a central, outsource provider who has the staff and expertise. The benefits of remote printing is this flexibility with output. Through the newest tools, they can control how items are sent. This can include paper, electronic, email, fax, or text. Mail integrity. You can place 2D barcodes on the mail piece to make sure the proper number of sheets are being inserted, especially important with variable page items like invoices and statements. They can validate that the address is a good address to make sure that you're not reducing the return undeliverables addressed items. They can provide mail tracking capability. Documents are archived for retrieval in a central repository, and you can get postage discounts. Most small offices don't have any ability to get any postal discounts. You need to do 500 pieces in a first-class automated mailing and 200 pieces in a marketing mail mailing in order to get any postal discounts. These services can consolidate mail in smaller batches so you can get postal discounts, and you can see the rates here. Typically, these services will offer 46 to 49-cent postage rates, or if it's higher volume, it could be some of the first-class automation rates of 43 to 48 cents. If you can convert it to marketing mail, you're at 27 to 33 cents, and if you're a nonprofit, it could be 15 to 20 cents. So you can see the way to get mail savings is to move it from the single piece rates to these more pre-sorted automated rates that offer significant savings. The benefit of this technology is you can dump it to somebody else who can take care of it. They have the right expertise, they have the right staff, and then they have the right equipment to get these things out efficiently, which is much more efficient than people sitting around folding and stuffing paper. On-site or off-site, things to consider. Do you have any internal production facilities that can process mail for your field locations? Is there any risk to outsourcing your mail from a client or compliance requirement perspective? Was there a cost difference of insourcing or outsourcing? Was a cost justification done? How is the solution going to be managed? Could there be a hybrid model where offsite mail services are used for specific jobs or to manage peak periods, or in some cases, people just use it for disaster recovery? Outsource print and mail. In the United States, we estimate 75%, over 75% of the mail is processed through an outsourced mailer that has the staff, equipment, and expertise to do this. This outsourcing has happened for the following reasons. USPS rules have gotten more difficult to get automation discounts. 15 years ago, it used to be where people would have barcoding solutions doing smaller volume like applications in their offices. That's just gone away. It's too difficult to comply with the postal rules about address hygiene and move compliance and electronic submission and IMDb barcodes that more people have just pushed that off to professionals. As people in the mailing industry have retired, there's less expertise internally. Fewer people are going into the mail industry. So it's good to have, outsourced providers that have that expertise. And there's improved levels of automation by externally having these providers do it. They have better equipment that's faster, that runs multiple shifts, that can do higher levels of inserting and, postal compliance than you can do in your own office. The key challenge with outsourced print and mail services for the client perspective is there's usually some lack of visibility to what's happening. There's variability in the rates that are paid for these service fees and postage. There's inconsistent levels of details provided on invoices, and I'll give you some backup on that. There's a lack of knowledge internally to leverage with suppliers. So the supplier has a lot more leverage than you, the buyer, because they know exactly how they're manipulating your work, and you may not have that same level of expertise or visibility. Invoice detail. This is an example from one customer that is 2 bills from 2 separate outsource providers that they use. And you can see every vendor is going to provide a different level of detail in their invoices. Some charge at the job level, others break it down by fee. We recommend that you require vendors to provide you the detail by fee so that you can understand what are you paying to compare the rates. If not on the invoice, there should be the ability to access web portals or an emailed backup with detailed reports that gives this detail. But these are, $100,000 jobs, and on the one side they just get a line item detail that said, here's the 5 line items that make that up, with no ability to show how things are prepared or compare or know what you're paying for. Versus the one on the right, which gives detail, but you may not know how that breaks out exactly for your jobs. Service fee variability. Outsource providers can be the Wild West because very few companies compare rates. There's nothing published online that will tell you how much this stuff is supposed to cost. There's no information that you can access unless you do formal RFPs. So the factors that have the greatest impact is, was the job put out to bid, or was it an add-on project to an existing provider? Does the vendor have a master service agreement for continual work at specific rates? Oftentimes, it's more ad hoc. What is the quantity and frequency of mailings? What are the data processing charges? There can be one of the largest fees inside of it can be data processing, and data processing could also be storage. What type of stock is used for paper and envelopes? How is it printed? The type of printing technology, color or black and white? How is the piece prepared, and could all it be automated, or is there handwork for higher levels of personalization? How is it mailed? What level of postal automation was used? Don't assume that the outsource provider is giving you the best postage rates on every piece. They could be marking up your postage. They could be charging you pre-sort fees that they could be marking up pre-sort fees that they're getting from providers they use. Was third-party providers used for pre-sort, mail forwarding, or shipping? And what was needed from the data besides mailing? Did you need to did you need to take an image of every document? Does it need to be stored on a website? Those costs can add significantly. Because of the difficulties in comparing jobs, most organizations have little control or knowledge of what these best rates should be because they're not diving into the details of each of these factors. What we've done to simplify this is we've come up with a categorization system to gain access at the fee level and detail. So we gain access at the fee level and detail for all invoices. So every invoice we have visibility to for our clients, as well as pulling in anything we can from the web portals. We log each line of their invoices into one of the categories above with subcategories based on the types of services used. We maintain this data over periods of time to be able to compare vendors and services from one to another. And then we benchmark rates to use the data for further negotiations and vendor selections. So by owning this process and controlling all of this data, it allows our clients the ability to get lower rates because they have more leverage when they're dealing with providers. So you can see there's some important things in a vendor strategy. When we look at the mail volumes that are outsourced, the first class pre-sort mail and the marketing mail, we saw again that in 2020, there was a huge decline. A little bit of the marketing mail volumes came back, but most didn't. So what it means is there's a set number of outsource providers out there. Those outsource providers are fighting for lower quantities of mail, which provides more leverage for you as the consumer. We recommend running an RFP, request for proposal, to find the best rates and service levels for your mailings. So the best way to do that we do for our clients, and you can do on your own, is build a defined template where it's easy to compare rates on the main mail expenses. Include vendors that meet the following criteria. They can support your customer's geographic area at the lowest cost. So this has gotten more important. Mail in October 1st of 2021, Post Office defined that mail is slowing down. They're slowing down mail. They're trying to put less mail on planes, more mail on trucks. And they have a service standard for mail that as items get farther away, you can expect 1 to 3 day extended delivery. So if you're mailing all over the country, if your mail is local, the last thing that you want is to be using someone that you thought you were saving money who's in Chicago to go back to Boston, because all that mail now gets delayed 1 to 2 days. You'd want to find a local or regional provider. If your mail is national, do you really want to produce it all in New York? You may want to produce it somewhere in a central part of the country so it can reach all the coasts, in a 2 to 3 day time period. And there are certain providers that are set up there. Is the provider close to a major pre-sort center? That's very important because most providers are going to use a pre-sort service for a lot of the mail that they can't pre-sort themselves. Are they in a low cost of living area and they can pass that savings on to rates? Do you really want to produce your mail in New York, New Jersey, San Francisco, which are expensive, or Los Angeles, which are expensive places to live? Because the rates are going to be passed on to you in your service fee. There are other places in the Midwest and in the South and the central part of the country that have much lower costs of labor. That makes much more sense to produce your mail there. Have the highest level of technology to support your needs. There's a big difference in shops that have higher level of automation versus those that don't. They can get you better postage rates, they can get you lower production costs, and it's important to make sure that they have the technology to support your needs. That specialize in the main mail classes for your mailer industry in vertical. Example, there are some outsourced providers that focus on bank statements. There are some that focus on the insurance industry. So do they have the specialization to support your type of mail? And do they have the value-added services you need? So what we recommend is compare the responders and request references, review their account management processes for customer service and issue resolution, and look for discounts by consolidating higher volumes of mail into fewer suppliers. We work with lots of companies that before we start working with them, they had 3 to 15 different outsource providers that they're using. And it makes sense to have preferred agreements with much fewer numbers of providers so you can leverage the volume spends to get better rates for everything. Presort services. Presort services is the #1 way to save money in postage. What they do, just if you're not familiar with them, is they pick up your mail in your office on a daily basis, weekly or monthly, or based on a project. And it's a work share program. So you would meter your mail typically at the lower postage rates, and the pre-sort house will submit your mail at at even lower discount rates because they'll commingle it with other mailers and they'll share the savings with you, and you may get an invoice for charges, but it's still less than the single piece postage rate that you're paying. So these are great services to use. There are probably about 100 different pre-sort, 100 to 150 different pre-sort services throughout the country. They support most metropolitan areas. There is a pre-sort service, if not multiple. So we recommend using them when you have the volumes to justify them. And usually that's people that are doing over 300 or 400 pieces a day, or have single mailings of 1,000 pieces or more. It makes sense to use them. So where we fit in with Presort and where we see the need around Presort is providing visibility to our clients. Where are they using Presort today, along with what classes are they using, first class, marketing, international, what sizes are processed, letters, flats, postcards, and parcels, what rates are charged, what volumes are processed, what service standards are used, is it same day or next day? And then we recommend from the information from that, how do you increase the scope of Presort? How do you find additional locations, different classes of mail that are being potentially even outsourced mailings that can qualify for Presort? Then can the rates be reduced, either through creating leverage with existing providers, doing a request for proposal, seeing what other providers can support your needs. We have a database that shows where all these Presort providers are, and we make our best efforts to reduce costs wherever possible. We audit the invoices. Are they charging you the right rates, for your Presort? Rate change. Rate change is a big deal. Every year, the post office increases their rates. Now it's going to be once or twice a year. And the question at every rate increase is, as the post office raises rates, are you getting the full rate increase in your rate from the Presort service? And is the Presort service basically making a bigger chunk of profit from you from the rate change? In other words, in every rate change, the Presort service is only supposed to pass off the difference between the rate in which they're paying and the rate in which the increase happens. So most of the time we find that the Presort providers pass on the full rate increase and they're making a bigger share of the profit. The goal is to have control of what these differences are and to be able to hold the Presort services accountable to only charging you the rate increase that's your fair share of it. And then we found through having our web platform that controls all these expenses, it allows us to be able to manage it and then find savings for clients inside this. So you can do these things on your own, but having a service provider that has the detail and expertise and the systems behind making sure all this happens can be easier for some clients. Best practices. Enterprise options should be used where possible to give you room to grow and expand. And so even if it's outsourced providers, you should consolidate all of your spends into as fewer providers as possible and have enterprise views to them. Analysis needs to be done to justify these solutions, which involves getting the details of the core mailing spends. What are the mail volumes? What are the package spends? What are the savings areas? Change management. There's no matter what you're doing in an organization, there is a change cost. Support may be needed on implementation, promoting use inside your organization, and then there may be the need for ongoing support, which is about administration aspects of these systems. The core areas we see is we need, like, someone has got to support your first responder to questions, user administration, reporting on activities and spends, and then billing validations of the systems to make sure that they're being, the proper chargeback is happening to your users, that invoices from the vendors are being validated. In central administration, the keys to success that we found is with users spread out with different locations, working remotely and different needs. How do you implement and manage these systems to ensure success? It's all about the central administration. You need help, like we find that clients need help defining the requirements, implementing the systems, managing the training and the onboarding of the users, managing the users' access. Even with single sign-on, there are pieces that need management around user access, case and issue management, monitoring their usage levels, reporting on the key metrics that are defined by the client, and then quantifying the savings and expanding and promoting its use. For our clients, we have a case management portal that we send clients to, and you could set the similar type of process on. We just find that managing the case management over email, back and forth emails, is not necessarily effective. If we can have a case management system where we can have a customized list of action items that clients typically need, a way for them to log their case, and then a case number being emailed to them and to a direct agent inside that can help manage those issues, and then have closure on those issues directly with the end user, is the number one way to make sure that the clients are happy with the solutions and that we have successful implementations of these systems. The other thing is that these issues get reported on and documented, so frequently asked questions documents can be promoted so that these, basically these questions stop for the future. Summary. Mail equipment and postage. The goal is to gain, we believe in enterprise mail management. And what we talk about with that is having visibility across all aspects of mail spends to be able to control the use and drive down costs wherever possible. Mail equipment and postage. The number one thing is you need to gain visibility and drive savings on the cost of equipment, metered postage that is run through your locations. Home and small office mail. We know that only a small percentage of the locations have equipment. There needs to be visibility, a simplified process on distributing postage and accounting for postage generated in small offices and remote workers. Permits. Postal permits. Clients will typically have permits for funding outsourced mail project, business reply mail, and this is, again, the Wild West. There's very few centralized control of the postal accounts that people have directly with the post office. So what we try to do is have simplified oversight and visibility and access to the postage process, the direct USPS accounts. And this is done through setting up a gateway account through the Postal Service, linking all the accounts that you have, running reports from those systems to manage balance and use throughout an organization, and then find ways to reduce costs. Outsource mail service. Gain central visibility to outsource mail and Presort service providers, drive savings like we talked about. And then expedited documents and parcel shipments. And with the proper tools and oversight to allow users to send overnights and parcels at the lowest cost with the fastest delivery times by having comparisons at the point of shipment. So the beauty of these 5 things is this controls all mail expenses across your organization. Everything falls into one of these 5 buckets. They can all be controlled and managed. We find that the clients don't have the detail to know what they're spending across all those areas. They don't know what they're spending in outsourced mail, or what they're spending in meters, or what they're spending through their home and traveling office workers. So we do no cost analysis for our clients prior to even asking people to commit to our services, that we find makes it easy for them to see what's happening inside their organization. So this is our process for conducting an analysis. we need to get the details of the current spends, including any mail equipment and postage. And to do that, we ask, are there any current mailing vendor provided reports? Some cases people have those, in some cases they don't. Can we get an accounts payable export from the key mailing vendors, including the USPS? And we provide a list of what the main mailing vendors are named so they can run a report from their business system to show where they're spending money. From that report, we request a limited number of PDF invoices so we can get, locations, account numbers, things like that. We get a letter of authority from our clients, and then we log that information into the vendor's websites to get full detail of their expenses, their agreements, their terms, their postage spends. For shipping spends with UPS and FedEx, we ask for 1 month of detail, electronic invoice detail, basically package level detail. And that files should include line item detail by tracking number and to include the accessorial services that make up a huge part of the costs. Are there any current issues and challenges? And then from the time we get the data, we can typically turn it around in two to 3 weeks at no cost or obligation. This analysis is important, even if you don't work with us in the future, to have visibility of what is going on inside your organization that can drive down costs. In summary, essential mail is moving electronic, but at a slow rate. Day-to-day, first-class piece, single-piece mailing is moving at a very fast rate, but it's moving away from the single-piece mail to discounted mail classes, which is being outsourced. And as we saw, those pre-sorted and automated mail classes are going down at much slower rates. Promotional targeted mail is still an effective means to reach clients. Marketing mail volumes, besides the COVID decline, has been going down at very small declines, and in some years it goes up a little bit. And because it is still an effective means to reach customers with all of the ways that you can't, with do not call lists and people not watching commercials because they're watching Netflix and not listening to radio because they're listening to Spotify. There are fewer ways to reach clients. Direct mail is still an effective way to get a custom message to a client, and it's still used by marketers. It's not going away anytime soon. But technology is moving to the cloud where mail can be generated either physically with online postage or can be moved to production facilities where it can be sent in the most efficient ways. Single-piece mail volumes will continue to decline at 6 to 9%. Production mail volumes will decline at slower rates. Postage and shipping rates will increase at the fastest levels we've seen in history. And there is a need for rate shopping for the most optimal solution. The only way that we're going to be able to reduce costs in the future around parcel and expedited document is to be able to have the right tools to compare the rates on a package by package basis at the point of shipment and to make better decisions on how things are sent. There's a need to have enterprise-wide visibility to mail and parcel spends to control the costs and optimize services. It is the only way to reduce costs is to have the visibility of what's happening today and then to look for strategies that reduce costs based on your specific applications. All that we do as an organization is we drive costs for our client, drive cost savings for our clients. We've saved our clients $68 million in mail spends. We run the largest mail equipment fleet in the world with 181,000 pieces of mailing equipment and online postage solutions under management. We have saved our clients an average of $2 million. Mail equipment, which was sort of our starting place, we've averaged 58% savings. On our team, we have 220 years of direct experience in this area. We provide the only web-based visibility tools available in the industry that consolidate mail spends across all your mailing vendors into one consolidated portal. We've also recovered $24 million in lost postage, vendor overcharges, and fees for our clients. Our clients are the largest companies in America. We have 2 clients in the Fortune 10. We've worked with 8 of the top 15 banks, 3 of the top 10 insurance companies. Our clients, are basically, it doesn't have to be that large. Some of them are smaller, but they usually are people that have multiple locations or have disparate mailing spends and would like to have better controls and drive savings around it. But we're familiar and experts in managing this type of spends for our clients and driving savings. Most of our clients are on contingency basis. Some clients pay us management fees because they want a specific service for us to perform, but it could be either one. So there's no risk, or it's defined services that our clients define. We will typically do a no-cost analysis of your mail spends. Like I said, we need a letter of authority, an accounts payable report, some invoice copies, an export from UPS and FedEx, and we can pull this together. We look at all of your spends, we conduct the analysis, and after the analysis is done, we'll give you the reports and the details of all of our findings. And then if you decide you want to move forward, we'll submit credit requests, lost postage, we'll negotiate pricing, we'll work with your locations on right sizing and validations, and we'll give a full implementation of the savings. We don't commit to anything for you. We provide all savings opportunities and we get your approval before we agree. We manage everything in a web dashboard ongoing for our clients at no fee. And we provide an ongoing support to manage renewals, billing, and vendor compliance because people are going to have agreements that come up into the future. There's always changes and acquisitions that clients have. There's always things that need to be due for clients. So we do this type of educational content for two reasons. One is we want to make sure that we're educating the industry on what are the biggest challenges and what are the issues, and hopefully you saw that today. And two, so people can get a sense of the detail in which we're trying to manage these expense categories for our clients with the issues that we think are the most relevant. So I want to thank everybody for being on the call, and we're going to open it up to see if there are any questions. And we provide this type of educational content probably 6 to 10 times per year, and we'll make sure that you're notified of additional sessions as they come up.
Thanks, Adam. I wanted to remind everybody that there are 2 different ways to ask questions. You can either raise your hand and ask a question, we'll unmute you, or you can type your question in the chat box. Our social media pages are listed there for your convenience. We do post there on a more regular basis than we do have webinars. So if you want to get more information on a more frequent basis from us, you can go there. All right, it looks like we have a question. Out of everything that we discussed today, what are the biggest ways we can drive savings?
I'd say that the 2 biggest ways that are probably most important for organizations to drive cost is one, to have a method to compare rates across multiple carriers and service options at the point of shipment. So getting away from having just a carrier provided system, but having a way to compare rates with the rate increases that are about to happen. I mean, 13 to 15% fuel surcharges that are most likely going to go up. People need a way to do that. The other thing is, because so much of mail is outsourced, and so much of an organization's mail spends that isn't being run directly in their company, it's being outsourced, and it's hitting different departments that are controlling that. Getting central visibility to the outsourced mail spends and making sure there's a defined strategy around that to drive down costs. Because I guarantee that any non-centralized strategy around outsourced mail, there are savings available.
All right, and we have another question. We have a contract with UPS. Do we need to have one with FedEx as well?
If you have both carriers today, it's always good to have a way to compare rates between those carriers. If you primarily use UPS, you primarily use FedEx, it's not necessary to have a second vendor. The rate tables between UPS and FedEx are very similar, and it's usually the discount you can negotiate off those rate tables. So having one is typically sufficient. The important thing is to be able to compare that single carrier against the other services within that carrier, like using air to ground, like we talked about, and also to be able to compare against the Postal Service. So I wouldn't say it's necessary to have both UPS and FedEx in an organization. Usually leveraging your spend with putting the most spend under one carrier is probably going to get you the best discounts overall.
Okay, it looks like we have no further questions, so I would like to thank everybody for joining us today. Please fill out the survey that will appear at the conclusion of the webinar, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.